When I was 10, on my sister's birthday, she wanted a porcelain doll. My father said, "Go on, slap your sister, I'll buy it for you." And so, I took a hard slap across the face. When I was 17, my father sent my sister to study abroad but refused to pay for my college. I begged him for days. He threw $50 at me. "I don't owe you a damn thing, Alara." When I was 27, my sister returned from overseas, took a liking to my husband, and began to subtly, and not so subtly, flirt with him. My father sneered at me, "If you can't keep a man, that's your own failure." Yes, they all preferred my sister Rosalie, the one with a fancy degree and the sweet-talking tongue. Even my own son. On his 5th birthday, my son Leo wanted to go to the amusement park, but not with me. He said I was too bossy. My husband David joked with him, "Go give mommy a slap. If she gets mad, she won't go. Then we can go with your Auntie Rosalie." And my son really did walk over and slap me. The sound was sharp and loud. I just stood there, stunned, until my son's voice piped up again. "Daddy, is she mad now? Can I go to the amusement park with Auntie Rosalie?" David took our son without telling me. When they came back, Leo was holding a small, cheap-looking stuffed toy. He held it out to me timidly, not saying a word. But his eyes kept darting toward David, as if to say, "I did what you told me to make her happy. Why is she still ignoring me?" I was in the dining room, packaging the desserts I had just finished baking. David walked in, frowning in disapproval. "Alara, are you really going to stay mad at your own son this long over a joke? He was thinking about you the whole time we were at the park today. And this is the look you give him?" I glanced down at the crudely made toy in Leo's hands. On my phone, sitting on the table, was a message from Rosalie, sent just before they'd walked in. "Are you seriously jealous of me over Leo again? Why do you always have to turn everything into a competition with me since we were kids? But I won't hold it against you. We saw one of those scan a code, win a prize things at the park, so I had David get one for you. Just take it and get over it, okay?" David took the toy from Leo and pushed it toward me. "Alara, don't be childish in front of him." I sealed the last bag of cookies and finally looked up. "I'm not angry." I took out a small cookie and offered it to Leo. "Help mommy taste test this, okay?" Leo looked at the rabbit-shaped cookie. "Mommy, you used to only make the little bear cookies I like." "Oh, I got tired of those. I wanted to try something new." I started for the door. David called after me. "Where are you going this late?" "I have some things to take care of." I put on my shoes, not bothering to give him the usual detailed report of my whereabouts. I just told Leo, "Remember to brush your teeth after your dessert. Mommy won't be here to tuck you in tonight." David texted me later, "When are you coming home?" I pressed the button and let the screen go dark. My best friend Sadie was sampling my latest creation. "So? What's the verdict?" Sadie took a delicate bite, her eyes widening. "Honey, I've been telling you for years we should open a dessert shop together. I'm so happy you finally come around. Honestly, I was starting to think you were going to be a housewife for the rest of your life." She looked at me with warmth, both proud and relieved. Then she added, "But my shop is in the next city over. Are you sure you can bear to be away from Leo?" I didn't answer. My mind drifted back to the morning of Leo's birthday. I had woken at dawn to prepare a whole table of his favorite foods. Even the cake decoration, his beloved Spider-Man, I had painstakingly carved out of chocolate, detail by detail. But Leo hadn't even glanced at it. He was used to my cooking. No matter how creative or delicious, it could never compete with fried chicken and soda from a fast food joint. "Daddy, it's my birthday. Can Auntie Rosalie take me to the amusement park? I don't want Mom's food. I'm so sick of it." And that's when David had said it. "Go give Mommy a slap." How could I even begin to explain that to Sadie? I just sighed. People really do change? I used to think all I ever wanted was a family of my own, that a husband and child were my destiny. When you told me a career was a woman's real foundation, I didn't agree. I even tried to convince you to get married. My voice thickened with emotion. Thank you for not holding that against me, and for still giving me a chance. Sadie squeezed my hand. As long as you're willing to change, it's never too late. By the time I finished talking business with Sadie, it was past 9. When I got home, I found Rosalie sitting on the sofa with David. She was dressed in something light and revealing, sitting close to him. In the past, the sight would have sent me into a hysterical fit. So out of habit, David went immediately on the defensive. What are you thinking now? Leo wouldn't go to sleep without someone comforting him, so I asked your sister to come over. Oh? Is he asleep now? I cut him off calmly. My calm unnerved him. Just fell asleep, he muttered. Good. I'm going to wash up. The annoyance on his face deepened. He suddenly grabbed my wrist. Elara, I told you, your sister and I. Did I ask you anything? I looked at him, genuinely confused. Rosalie suddenly cried out. David, I think I twisted my ankle. Can you give me a ride? He looked back at me, checking my reaction. It's late. It's not safe for her to go alone. You should take her? Relieved, he nodded. I'll be right back. But a quick glance at Rosalie's Instagram story showed the two of them at a bar. She was dancing wildly. David was right there beside her. A deep exhaustion washed over me. That night, Leo shuffled into my room, clutching his toy. Mommy, aren't you sleeping with me tonight? No, sweetheart. Mommy is going to sleep in the guest room. I looked at my reflection, at the faint handprint still visible on my cheek. Leo's lip jutted out. If you don't sleep with me, then I'm not letting you take me to school tomorrow. And I won't eat your food either. I met his gaze in the mirror. Leo, if you're so afraid of the dark, why don't you ask your father? Daddy has to work. You don't do anything all day but spend Daddy's money. Isn't it your job to put me to sleep? So if I stop spending Daddy's money, I don't have to put you to sleep anymore? He sneered, imitating David. Don't be ridiculous, Mom. You're not smart or successful like Auntie Rosalie. If you didn't spend Dad's money, where would you get any? From Grandpa? Even Grandpa says you're the most useless person in the family. I had heard words like these my entire life. I wasn't as brilliant as Rosalie. I wasn't as educated as Rosalie. She was Rosalie the Bloom. I was Elara the block of wood. But I had never imagined hearing those same words from my son, the boy I had carried for 9 months, the boy I had risked my life to bring into this world. My hands trembled. A chill spread through me. Rage and sorrow twisted in my chest, then drained away, leaving only a dead stillness. Fine, then. Make sure you get up early tomorrow. Mommy won't be making you breakfast. At dawn, I packed a suitcase. I took one last look at the home I had so carefully nurtured, the clean clothes drying on the balcony, the ivy and potted plants I had tended. They were just like me, treated with casual indifference, neglected, trampled. I sent a message to my neighbor, who also loved gardening. If you wouldn't mind, could I give you all my plants? I'd love for them to have a good home. 9 hours later, the plane landed in Ardencroft. When I turned on my phone, dozens of messages from David flooded the screen. Where are you? What kind of mother are you? Leo was late for school. Don't you care? Elara, are you seriously still sulking about me and your sister? She's your sister. What do you think is going to happen? No wonder your father can't stand you. You'll never be as good as Rosalie. I stared at the words. For the first time in years, I felt the faint stirrings of pain, sharp barbs clawing into me. My heart ached with 1,000 tiny pinpricks. And then, finally, I called him back. The first night away from my old life was the first night in years that I slept without waking to a child's cries or to the sound of my husband coming home late, smelling of alcohol and perfume that was not mine. The bed in the small guest house felt unfamiliar, but the silence was a kind of lullaby that I had not realized I craved. When I woke, the morning light spilling through the curtains was sharp and clean, as if it were announcing the beginning of something I had not yet dared to name. I had left everything behind. My son. My marriage. My reputation as the dutiful daughter who never raised her voice and never caused a scene. I had left even the plants on my balcony, those last silent witnesses of the slow erosion of my dignity. Sadie met me at the door of her shop with 2 cups of coffee. Her smile was weary but determined. She was already dressed in her apron, ready for a day of kneading, baking, and selling. I held the warm cup in my hands, and for the first time in a long time, I felt like someone believed in me. She had been telling me for years that I had talent beyond my kitchen, that my desserts carried something people would pay for. I had ignored her then, too tangled in the role I thought I was destined to play. Wife. Mother. Daughter. Always second to Rosalie. Always waiting for scraps of attention or approval. But now, here I was, standing in front of her, finally ready to listen. The shop was small, barely enough room for 2 display cases and a few tables near the window. But there was a charm to it. Customers trickled in, greeting Sadie with warmth that made it clear she was beloved in this town. She introduced me not as a guest but as her partner. The word stung me at first. I was not used to being introduced as anything other than someone's wife or someone's mother. But here, in this new place, I was allowed to be me. Elara. Not Rosalie's shadow. Not David's neglected wife. Not Leo's scolded mother. Just me. Of course, my phone would not stop buzzing. Message after message from David, from my father, even from my sister. My father's tone was full of outrage. How dare I abandon my duties? Did I forget that he had clothed me and fed me? He spoke as if every crumb I had ever eaten had been a debt I could never repay. David's messages shifted between anger and false tenderness. One moment he accused me of being a terrible mother, the next he begged me to come home. He said Leo was crying for me. He said a child needed his mother. And then he accused me of selfishness. I knew these patterns well. Guilt, shame, anger, manipulation. They had all used the same tools for years, and I had always folded under them. But not now. Not anymore. I muted the phone and slipped it into my bag. Their voices no longer had the right to dictate who I was. The first weeks were hard. My body still woke at dawn, prepared to cook breakfast for people who would not thank me. At times, my hands trembled with the urge to check on Leo. I imagined his small face, the pout in his lips, the way he cried when he did not get his way. The voice of my son was carved into me. Yet, each time I remembered the sting on my cheek, the way his tiny hand had delivered that slap at his father's command, I felt the ice return to my veins. He had learned from them too well. Perhaps, one day, he would unlearn it. But it was not my duty anymore to sacrifice my life in the hope that he might change. My job now was to change myself. Sadie gave me work that filled my days. She had her recipes, but she encouraged me to create my own. Slowly, I began to experiment again. Almond tarts with subtle citrus, sponge cakes layered with chocolate so delicate it melted like silk, cookies shaped like rabbits and bears that carried with them bittersweet memories. Customers began to notice. They asked for the new items, praising them with words I had rarely heard in my own home. Delicious. Beautiful. Perfect. Every compliment was a drop of water on soil that had been dry for years. I began to bloom in ways I had forgotten I could. But the past was not done with me. A letter arrived one afternoon, not from David, not from Rosalie, but from my father. He had always written with cold precision, even his handwriting sharp like a blade. He demanded I return. He said that my mother was unwell, that my absence was bringing shame to the family. He said Rosalie was suffering from the gossip surrounding David, and that as her sister, it was my responsibility to protect her reputation. The words made me laugh, a sound so hollow and strange that even Sadie looked up from the counter. They wanted me back not out of love, but because without me to absorb the blows, their own lives were becoming uncomfortable. I burned the letter in the sink, watching the flames consume every stroke of his ink. The smoke that rose smelled of freedom. Meanwhile, David grew desperate. He sent photos of Leo, dressed for school, playing in the yard, holding up drawings he had made. Each image was meant to remind me of what I had left. But even through the pixels of the phone screen, I could see the rehearsed poses, the way David's hand must have guided Leo to smile, to hold up the paper, to look like a picture of innocence. And in every photo, I noticed something else. Rosalie's presence. Her earrings on the counter, her perfume in the background, her shadow in the corner of a mirror. She was not even hiding it anymore. The two of them had grown bold in my absence. And though part of me burned with betrayal, another part felt strangely calm. They were proving what I had known all along. That I had been nothing but an obstacle. That my pain had always been their entertainment. One evening, as Sadie and I closed the shop, she asked me the question I had been avoiding. Do you plan to divorce him? The word divorce sat heavy in my chest. In my family, divorce was considered a disgrace, a failure that could never be erased. My mother had endured years of cruelty because of that belief. I had once thought I would do the same. But now, standing on the quiet street with the scent of sugar and flour still on my hands, I realized the failure was not mine. It was theirs. And yes, I said, I will divorce him. The process would not be easy. David would fight. He would not want to lose face, and he would not want to lose control of me. He would use Leo as his weapon. I knew it. And my father would side with him. Rosalie would act the victim. They would all paint me as the cold, ungrateful woman who abandoned her child. But I no longer cared about the stories they spun. I had my own story to write now, and it would not be theirs. Days turned into weeks. Word spread about the desserts at Sadie's shop, and soon we were busier than ever. I worked with a determination that startled even me. Each cake I decorated, each pastry I perfected, felt like laying a stone on the foundation of a new life. Customers began asking for me by name. Elara. They wanted my creations, not Rosalie's charm or David's jokes or my father's money. They wanted what I could do with my own 2 hands. That truth gave me strength. Still, at night, I sometimes dreamed of Leo. In my dreams, he was smaller, softer, reaching for me not with cruelty but with love. In those moments, my chest ached so badly I woke with tears on my face. The guilt tried to creep in, whispering that I was heartless, that a mother should never leave her child. But then I remembered his words, sharp as knives, echoing from his small mouth. You are useless. You are nothing without Dad. And I reminded myself that I had not abandoned my son. I had abandoned the cruelty he had been taught. I prayed silently that one day he would find the truth for himself. The breaking point came when David showed up at Sadie's shop. He walked in as if he owned the place, his suit immaculate, his face polished with arrogance. He looked around, dismissing the little tables and the customers who stared curiously. And then he saw me behind the counter. Elara, he said, as if speaking my name alone should have been enough to make me crumble. But I did not crumble. I stood straight, my hands dusted with flour, my apron marked with chocolate. I was no longer his silent housewife. I was me. He began with sweet words, telling me he missed me, that Leo cried every night, that Rosalie had only been helping, nothing more. Then his tone shifted. He accused me of abandoning my child, of destroying the family, of bringing shame on his name. He threatened to take Leo away from me forever if I dared to file for divorce. But I did not flinch. Not this time. Sadie stepped forward then, fierce as ever, and told him to leave. The customers watched, their eyes sharp, their ears listening. David did not like witnesses. He left, but not before hissing that I would regret this. That no one would ever believe my side. That Rosalie was already preparing her story, and soon the whole world would see me for what I truly was. His words rolled off me like water. For the first time, I realized his power over me was gone. That night, I sat with Sadie and drafted the first papers. Divorce. Custody. Division of property. The words were heavy, but they were mine. I was claiming my freedom not in whispers but in ink that would not burn away. The day I filed for divorce, the sky was heavy with clouds, the kind that promised rain but never delivered. My hands did not tremble when I signed the papers. They had trembled too often in the past, clutching cooking utensils, folding laundry, cleaning up messes, or holding back words I wanted to scream. But this time, they were steady. The woman at the clerk's desk looked at me with a hint of pity, as though she could see the story written in my tired eyes. I thanked her and walked away without looking back. The stamp on the document felt like a key turning inside a locked door. David reacted exactly as I had expected. His first phone call was fury, his second was pleading, and his third was calculated silence. By the fourth, he sent me a photo of Leo, sitting on Rosalie's lap, clutching her arm with a smile that looked rehearsed. The caption beneath read, "He needs his family. Come home." But Leo's eyes in the photo told me something else. They darted to the side, toward David perhaps, searching for approval. The same way he had looked at him after striking me on his birthday. Even at his age, he had already learned the game of performing for love. And that broke me more than David's threats ever could. Rosalie, of course, took to social media. Her posts were crafted carefully, as if she had been rehearsing this role her whole life. The grieving sister forced to step in, the loving aunt who cared for her nephew when his selfish mother ran away. She posted pictures of herself making pancakes with Leo, reading bedtime stories, holding his hand at the park. Comments poured in. What a wonderful aunt. She is like a second mother. Poor Leo, abandoned. And beneath each praise, I could feel Rosalie's smile widening, her triumph growing. She had always wanted what was mine, even when what was mine was nothing but burdens and duties. And now she had taken even those, wrapping them in ribbons of false generosity. The hardest blow came not from Rosalie, not from David, but from my own father. He called me one evening, his voice colder than winter. He accused me of dishonoring him, of throwing away the family name. He said I was ungrateful for every dollar he had ever spent on me. He reminded me that Rosalie had gone abroad because he believed in her, that she had made something of herself, while I had remained a disappointment. He told me that if I wanted to prove myself, I should return to my husband and my child, beg forgiveness, and endure like a proper woman. His words carved into me, each one sharper than the last. But then I realized something. I had been enduring my entire life. And where had it led me? To humiliation, to betrayal, to a slap from the son I had raised. Endurance had never saved me. Only leaving had. Sadie became my shield. She saw the way my shoulders tensed when my phone buzzed, the way I avoided mirrors when my father's voice still echoed in my ears. She would take the phone from my hands and silence it without hesitation. Focus on the work, she told me. The shop became my sanctuary, a place where I could pour everything I had into sugar and flour, into butter and chocolate. The steady rhythm of baking soothed me, and each compliment from a customer stitched another tear in the fabric of my soul. People began traveling from neighboring towns just to try our desserts. They spoke my name with admiration, and for the first time, I believed I was more than the roles others had assigned me. But freedom has a price, and David was determined to make me pay it. He hired lawyers, sending papers that demanded full custody of Leo. He accused me of abandonment, of neglect, of being unfit. He claimed I had run away with another man, that I was hiding secrets, that I was unstable. Each lie was another stone hurled at me, but I stood tall. I had left because I wanted to live, not because I wanted to escape responsibility. My lawyer advised me to gather evidence, to show the truth of what life had been in that house. The slap, the insults, the nights David stayed out, the way Rosalie had inserted herself into our marriage. But much of it was invisible, lived only in my memory. Pain does not always leave a trail on paper. Sometimes it lives only in the body, in the way a woman flinches when her husband raises his hand too quickly, in the way she lowers her eyes when her sister smirks. I began to write everything down. Every message, every call, every memory. I filled pages with the truth of what I had endured. Writing became another form of survival. It was no longer just baking that saved me, but words too. My story had value, even if they had tried to erase it all these years. Each sentence was proof that I was not imagining things, that the cruelty was real, that I had lived through it and come out breathing. The custody battle loomed like a storm on the horizon. David paraded Rosalie in front of the court as though she were already Leo's stepmother. She dressed modestly for hearings, her hair tied back, her smile demure. She played the role of caretaker perfectly, speaking gently about Leo's routines, about the bedtime stories, about the way he needed stability. I watched from across the room, my heart pounding with fury. It was not her place. She was not his mother. And yet, in the eyes of strangers, she appeared the picture of maternal devotion. I could see the doubt flickering in the judge's eyes, the same doubt that had haunted me all my life. Rosalie was always the bloom, the star, the one everyone loved. And I was always the shadow. But not this time. I took the stand and spoke plainly. I told them about the years of neglect, about the favoritism that had hollowed my son's heart, about the slap that had cut deeper than any knife. I did not cry. I did not raise my voice. I simply told the truth, steady and clear. I spoke not as the broken wife or the scorned sister, but as a woman who had survived. When I finished, the room was silent. For once, there was no laughter, no smirk from Rosalie, no sneer from David. Only silence. And in that silence, I found strength. The weeks dragged on, each hearing another battlefield. David used Leo like a pawn, bringing him to court, letting him run to Rosalie's arms, whispering in his ear. Leo repeated the lines they fed him, saying he wanted to stay with his father, that his mother was mean, that she had left him. Each word pierced me, but I refused to break. I had already broken once. I would not do it again. Instead, I looked at my son and prayed silently that one day he would see through the lies, that one day he would understand. Outside the courtroom, Sadie held my hand, grounding me. She reminded me that no matter the outcome, I had already won. I had chosen myself. I had chosen a life where I was not crushed beneath the weight of others. Even if the world painted me as the villain, I knew the truth. And the truth was enough to keep me standing. But then came the night that changed everything. I returned to the small apartment Sadie had helped me rent, exhausted after another grueling day in court. My phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. When I opened it, my heart nearly stopped. It was a video. In it, David and Rosalie were arguing in my old kitchen. The camera shook as though a child were holding it. And then I heard the voice. Leo's voice. He was the one filming. In the video, David shouted at Rosalie, accusing her of pushing too hard, of making him look desperate. Rosalie screamed back, mocking him, saying he was weak, that he had always been weak, that even with me gone he could not control the story. And then, in a moment that froze me to my core, Leo's small voice whispered, "I want mommy." Neither of them noticed. They kept fighting, their words venomous, their love exposed as nothing but hunger and greed. The video ended abruptly, the screen going black. I sat there in silence, the phone heavy in my hands. My son, who had parroted their cruelty, who had struck me with his hand, had chosen to record the truth. Somewhere inside him, beyond the layers of poison they had fed him, there was still a piece of him that wanted me. That needed me. That truth became my weapon. With that video, the cracks in their perfect facade began to widen. And for the first time, I saw a path forward not only for myself, but perhaps, one day, for my son. The courtroom was cold the morning I presented the video. My lawyer advised me to be cautious, to let the evidence speak for itself, but my heart raced as though I were about to leap from a cliff. David sat across from me, perfectly composed in his dark suit, Rosalie beside him in a pale dress that made her look innocent and fragile. Their hands were close on the table, almost touching, a display of unity they thought would sway the room. Leo sat between them, small and silent, his eyes lowered, his face pale. I wanted to run to him, to hold him, but I stayed still. I had learned that strength sometimes meant restraint. When the judge allowed us to present our final evidence, my lawyer placed the phone on the table and pressed play. The grainy video filled the courtroom with voices that could not be denied. David shouting, Rosalie mocking, their words dripping with venom. And then, the small trembling whisper of my son, "I want mommy." The room went silent except for the tinny echo of his voice. I watched the judge's face change, the attorneys shuffle their papers, even the spectators leaned forward as though they had witnessed something raw and undeniable. Rosalie's face drained of color, David's jaw tightened, and for the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. They could not twist this, could not polish it, could not explain it away. Their masks had cracked. Leo lifted his head then, his eyes darting toward me. For the briefest moment, he looked like the little boy I had once sung to sleep, the boy who had clung to me during storms, the boy who had not yet learned cruelty from the mouths of others. I held his gaze, steady, calm, refusing to cry. He needed to see that I was not broken, that I was still here, waiting. The ruling did not come that day. Courts moved slowly, dragging hope across weeks that feel like years. But the tide had shifted. My father called me again, his voice sharp with accusation. "How dare you humiliate your sister in public? Do you want to destroy this family?" I listened in silence and then finally said the words I had never dared before. "This family destroyed me a long time ago. I will not let you do the same to my son." He sputtered with rage, but I ended the call, my hands steady. I had no father anymore. I had no sister. I had no husband. And yet, for the first time, I had myself. Sadie stood by me every step. The shop had grown so busy we could barely keep up with orders. People traveled hours just to taste the pastries that carried my name. Articles appeared online, praising our small business, calling it a hidden gem. Some customers recognized me from Rosalie's carefully crafted posts and whispered, wondering if I was the same woman. But their whispers did not matter. I poured everything I had into the work, into building something that was mine, untouchable by Rosalie's schemes or David's lies. At night, exhaustion carried me into sleep, but dreams of Leo haunted me. Sometimes he was still the boy who struck me, his words sharp and cruel. Other times he was the boy in the video, whispering for me. The line between the two blurred, and my heart ached with a longing that no success could erase. I had left to save myself, but saving myself did not erase the bond between us. Blood ties are complicated, painful, impossible to sever completely. I did not know if he would ever forgive me for leaving, but I prayed that one day he would understand why I had to. The final hearing arrived like the breaking of a storm. The courtroom was packed, the air heavy with tension. David's lawyer spoke first, painting me as unstable, as selfish, as a mother who abandoned her child. He spoke of Rosalie's devotion, of the stability she offered, of the bright future Leo would have under their care. Rosalie sat with tears shining in her eyes, her performance flawless. I could almost believe her myself if I had not known the truth of her laughter, her cruelty, her hunger for what was never hers to take. Then it was my turn. My lawyer spoke, presenting the evidence, recounting the years of neglect, the favoritism, the betrayal. And then I rose, my voice clear and steady. I told the court that I had endured, that I had tried, that I had given everything until there was nothing left. I told them about the slap on Leo's birthday, about the words that had cut deeper than any blade, about the way my son had been taught to see me as useless. I did not plead. I did not beg. I simply told the truth. And then I played the video one last time. The whisper echoed through the room again, fragile and pure. I want mommy. The judge's ruling was delivered in measured tones, but each word struck like thunder. Custody would be shared, with primary guardianship granted to me. David's face twisted with fury, Rosalie's eyes widened in disbelief. They had expected to win as they always had, but this time, the story was not theirs to control. Leo would live with me, visiting his father under supervision. The court had seen through the performance, through the masks, through the lies. For once, truth had prevailed. Leo walked toward me hesitantly after the ruling, clutching the same cheap toy he had once offered me. His eyes were wary, uncertain, but when I bent down and opened my arms, he stepped into them. His small body was stiff at first, but then he buried his face in my shoulder, whispering so softly I barely heard it. Mommy. Just that one word, and it was enough. Tears blurred my vision, but I held them back. He needed strength, not sorrow. I kissed the top of his head and promised silently that I would never let him be used as a pawn again. David stormed out with Rosalie, their alliance already fraying. I could hear her voice rising in anger, blaming him, blaming me, blaming everyone but herself. My father did not call again. Perhaps he finally realized that his power over me had ended, or perhaps he was too busy comforting Rosalie. It no longer mattered. Their voices no longer defined me. Their shadows no longer darkened my path. Life did not become easy overnight. Raising Leo on my own was a challenge, especially when the wounds of the past still lingered in his small heart. He had been taught to see me as lesser, and unlearning that would take time. There were nights he still cried for his father, days when he repeated Rosalie's words with a sharpness that made my chest ache. But there were also mornings when he laughed at my rabbit-shaped cookies, afternoons when he hugged me tightly without prompting, evenings when he whispered good night and meant it. Slowly, piece by piece, we began to rebuild. The shop flourished. Sadie and I expanded, opening a second location, then a third. People came not only for the desserts but for the story. They saw in me a woman who had walked through fire and emerged not unscathed, but unburned. I did not hide my past anymore. I told it plainly, without shame. And in telling it, I found others who had lived similar lives, who had endured cruelty in silence. Together, we learned that silence was not strength. Speaking was. Years later, when I stood in the shop watching Leo serve cookies to a group of children, his laughter echoing through the air, I knew I had made the right choice. He was no longer the boy who struck me on his birthday. He was growing into someone kinder, stronger, freer. And though the scars remained, they were no longer chains. They were reminders of what we had survived, of what we had built together. Rosalie faded into obscurity, her charm no longer enough to shield her from the truth. David lived a smaller life, his arrogance dimmed, his control shattered. My father grew old, his voice weaker, his demands fewer. None of them mattered anymore. My life was no longer theirs to shape. On quiet nights, I would sit by the window, a cup of tea in my hands, watching the ivy grow outside. I had planted it again, in new soil, far from the cigarette butts and careless hands that once trampled it. It thrived, green and strong, stretching toward the light. Just like me. Just like Leo. And in that simple sight, I found peace.